Good morning, good morning, good morning. We are looking at P5 today. It is more of the same, but you do get some word problems a little later on in this IXL. And so without further ado, I'm going to jump straight in. So in this case, what we're looking at is two triangles that are similar. And when we come back, or if we don't come back, then we'll learn this via video later. We're going to find that there are certain ways that we know two triangles are similar to each other. But certainly if they're kind of built into each other like this, we know they're similar. If you pull down the Learn by Example, it's going to show you where you can actually pull those triangles apart and start pairing up the sides that you know are congruent. So in the same way we've talked about in the past, you're going to just be pairing up sides that are congruent, okay? So let's go back to this problem, and you can see here that you have this smaller triangle that is like this. I'm sorry, I know this is tough. L, M, K. And the hypotenuse, because this is a right triangle, is 5, and this leg down here is 3. But then you've got this big triangle that the little triangle is sort of sitting inside of. And so I'm going to go ahead and draw that bigger triangle. And it is LNO. So notice they're sharing this angle L here. Here we go. And this time, if you look, so this leg down here is D, and this hypotenuse is 5 plus 5, so the entire hypotenuse here is 10, okay? And because these are right triangles who share this upper angle here, these triangles are going to be similar to each other, okay? And we'll talk about why later. For now, just kind of take my word for it. And you always want to think about, like, what's that similarity proportion? And sometimes we can answer this question without doing a lot of work, right? So to get from 5 to 10, I would say 5 times 2 is 10. And so I could find D by saying, okay, well then 3 times 2 has to be what D is, okay? So this has to be 6 because they have to have the same proportion constant. So 10 divided by 5 is 2, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. So we know they're similar, right? If you don't want to do that, you can set your proportion up. 5 is to 10. So hypotenuse is to hypotenuse as leg is to leg, right? And then we cross multiply and we say 5D is equal to 30. And then we can divide by 5, and we're going to get D is equal to, it looks like a Z, 6, but you get the idea, yeah? And let me just grab my, here we go. Okay, so kind of same thing is happening here. Remember, we're looking for the same angles, which we have. See, 1 mark, 1 mark, 2 mark, 2 mark, and then these are both right triangles. And so when we set up our, and again, if you can just see this, then you might not need to set up a proportion, okay? So like between the 1 mark and the right angle and the 1 mark and the right angle, these sides are going to be proportionate with each other, right? So 4 as is to 8 as 5 is to what? So, well, 4 times 2 is 8. So 5 times 2 is going to be 10. So you can sometimes just see these things. But if not, it's no big deal. So if I want to compare this side to something, I notice that this side is between the right angle and the one marked angle. Okay, so I would say 4 is to 8. And I'm wanting to compare that to my unknown so that I can solve for it. So that's between the 2 mark and the 1 mark. So between the 2 mark and the 1 mark is my z. And if I started with the smaller triangle here, then I'm going to do the same thing. So 5 is to z. And then I can solve, cross multiply. So that is 4z is equal to 40. And so divide by 4, and z has to be 10 that way. Okay, so set up the proportion. If you have trouble just kind of looking at the triangles to see their relationship with each other, you can definitely do that. On this one, it's asking us for J, and it actually gives us, because it doesn't tell us anything about the angles this time, right? I mean, we do know we could mark the angles ourselves. Like these are vertical angles, so I could mark them. But we're not guaranteed anything about these angles out here without this statement. And so because of this statement, we could mark this angle equal to this angle, okay? And then if I'm wanting to compare sides, for example, if I want to compare 3, I suspect it's going to go with 6. Well, LM right here is going to go with JM. So there's JM. So I'm right. So 3 is going to pair with 6. And again, we can see that with the right angle to 1 mark, right angle to 1 mark. And again, you might be able to just see this, and I've marked over here, but you get the idea, that 3 is to 6 as 5 is to 10, because 3 times 2 is 6 and 5 times 2 is 10. If you don't believe me, then we can definitely go through here. So I'm going to say 6 is to 3. And I could have done 3 is to 6. I just need to make sure my next one goes in the same order. So KM, that is KM is going to pair with IM. So that's this side right here. Okay. So J is to 5. And I'm just double checking here. I started with 6, so I'm starting with J. So this is going to be J is to 5. And then cross multiply. So that is 30 is equal to 3J. And then if I divide by 10, if I divide by 3, because I'm trying to get J by itself, then I'm going to get 10. Right, just like we kind of saw when we were just looking at it. Oops. Okay, so then we've got more of this. So I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead here. And I'll work this one simply because you might have to pay a little bit of attention because there's one more number. It's not a necessary number for us. There is one more number in this problem. So I'm going to go ahead and look at this with you. So you've got 12 and 21 and 8, and oh, there's not one more number in this. So again, you would say like 8 is to 12 as S is to 21. Just set up the proportion and solve it. Jump ahead again. Oops, made my pointer. Same type of problem. I'll work it just in case, but and then you can just fast forward this. Remember, you can always take a YouTube video and listen to it faster if you think I'm talking too slow. That will kind of help you get through the video faster. Wow, that was awesome. So this is going to be the small triangle, which is 1.2 on this leg and 0.9 on this leg. It is F, D, E. And then you can see you've got a bigger triangle here. It's terrible. And it is E. See, they share E. And this is a right angle. This is H. And they actually tell me this whole base is 1.6, which is kind of nice. I definitely could have just added the 1.2 and the 0.4 to get 1.6. Then this side is N, and this angle is G. Scratch paper would probably be nice if you were struggling. So in this one, it is not obvious, like 1.2, what do you multiply? It always has to be multiplied, can't be add or subtract. What do you multiply 1.2 by to get 1.6? Like, I don't know off the top of my head. I could just divide them and find out, right? But that's really what we're doing when we set up a portion. We say 1.6 divided by 1.2 times 0.9 gives me n. Or I can just set up the proportion where I say this leg is to this leg, so 1.2 is to 1.6 as 0.9 is to n, and then multiply. So 1.2 n is equal to 1.6 times 0.9, which I don't know off the top of my head, so I'm going to pick up my calculator on my phone because that's what's close. 1.6 times 0.9 is 1.44. And so I'm not going to round that. I'm just going to write it exactly like I see it because I don't want to end up with rounding error in this problem. And then I'm going to divide 1.44 by 1.2. And I'm going to get 1.2, which is weird. So I'm going to try it one more time just to make sure. 1.44 divided by 1.2. Yep, I'm getting 1.2. So because that makes me curious if I have done this correctly, since I got a repeated number from this problem, I'm going to actually check my ratio. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide 1.2 by 1.6 and get a decimal, and then divide 0.9 by 1.2 and make sure I get the same decimal so I know I kept my ratio the same. Okay, so I'm going to take 1.2 and divide it by 1.6, and I get 0.75. And then I'm going to divide 0.9 by 1.2, this 1.2 this time, and I'm going to get 0.75 again. So I feel confident that I have the right answer, which was 1.2. Almost type 0.75. Okay, so now you're going to go through more of the same. So just set up the proportion the same. And then you get into some like word problems around the 70 mark. So it says Wilson wants to know the height of a statue if the statue casts a shadow 30 feet long. So I know that I'm talking about triangles in this, right? It says similar triangles in indirect measurement. So I kind of know the picture that I'm going to draw is going to have to do with triangles. So if I have a shadow, if I have a statue, that was really terrible. I'm going to try that again. If I have a statue, okay, and I'm going to just put an S up here to stand for statue, and it's going to cast a shadow 30 feet long, that 30-foot long shadow is going to be on the ground. So I'm going to put a 30-foot long shadow on the ground, and I'm just going to put an H here for shadow since they start with the same letter. So I put an S for statue, and I put an H for shadow just to kind of remind myself here. So here's my first triangle. okay? And then it says, and a nearby plum tree. Wilson wants to know the height of a statue. If the statue casts a shadow 30 feet long, and a nearby plum tree casts a shadow 15 foot long. Okay, so then we have an 8-foot tall tree that's casting a, so let's put a T here for tree. That's casting a shadow. I'm gonna put, there we go. That is 15 feet long. So they're actually giving me a second triangle here, right? So one off a plum tree, one off a statue. And so what's happening here is I've got this sunshine, right? And I don't know how much you guys have talked in the past about shadows or anything like that in your science class, but what happens is I get the same proportionality in my shadow when my sun is in the sky, giving me the same angle of depression is what it's called. So the question is how tall is this statue, right? Well, if, and hopefully you can just see this, 30 is to 15, so 15 times 2 would give me 30, then 8 times 2 would give me 16. It's going to have the same ratio because the sun is in the same place, okay? So then I could check this. 16 divided by 8 is 2. 30 divided by 15 is 2. And so pretty sure that my statue is 16 feet tall, okay? You are probably going to have to draw pictures for these word problems, okay? All right, a cell phone tower is 15 meters tall. So let's put T up here for tower, and it's 15 meters tall. Close by, there is a windmill that is 60 meters tall. So you got a windmill over here that's 60 meters tall. If the cell phone tower's shadow is 8 meters long, right? So here's my triangle. Whoa. How long is the windmill's shadow, right? So how long is the windmill shadow? Remember, shadow's on the ground. Well, 15 times what is 60, and hopefully you can see that as 4. Otherwise, you would say 15, you could set up the proportion 15 is to 60 as 8 is to x, right? So you would cross multiply and get 15x. And then you would do 8 times 60, which is 480. And because I'm still a little sleepy, I'm just checking that. 480. And then I would take 40 divided by 15, and I would get 32. Right, so again, you can always set this proportion up in order to solve it, or you can say, okay, 15 times 4 gives me 60, so 8 times 4 is gonna give me 32. Oh. Okay, so more shadow problems, and so I'm not going to keep working those. And let's jump ahead and see what else we've got here. More of the same, 9 is to 12 as z is to 16, so more of the same of that. and then you're into the challenge zone. So if you have any questions, just hit me up on It's Learning. If you haven't noticed, I can't respond to your school emails because of the way the server is set up. So message me on It's Learning if you need me. Good luck, stay safe, stay healthy, and I hope to see you soon.